These are 25 experiences that defined what it meant to grow up as a Black woman in the 1970s, a decade that shaped identity, culture, and community in ways that still resonate today. If you lived through this transformative era, these memories aren't just nostalgia, but the foundation of who you became. The 70s marked something special in Black American history when the intense activism of the 60s was giving way to cultural consolidation and identity formation. Black women and girls were navigating a world where they were creating their own standards of beauty, success, and self-expression, while still honoring the traditions passed down from previous generations. So let's take this journey together and remember what it was really like. The Saturday night ritual, we have to start with something every Black girl knew by heart. Getting your hair hot combed on Saturday nights for Sunday church. And honey, this was not just about grooming. It was a sacred ritual that connected generations of women. Picture this. Saturday evening would roll around and you knew what time it was as you sat in the kitchen while your mother or grandmother heated the pressing comb on the stove, testing the temperature carefully before running it through each section of your hair. The smell of hair grease and heat filled the entire room, and you learned real quick to sit perfectly still because getting burned on your ear or scalp was no joke. This process took hours, especially if you had thick hair. It was absolutely necessary because showing up to church with unkempt hair was not happening in any Black household I knew. But here's the beautiful part. While you sat there, the women in your life would talk about everything from neighborhood gossip to serious family matters and life lessons, and you absorbed all that wisdom even when you pretended not to be listening. For Black girls in the 70s, that hot comb was so much more than a grooming tool, since it was part of a tradition that connected generations of women who understood the importance of presentation and pride. The universal remedies. Every Black household had its universal solutions, and nothing was more essential than that blue jar of Vaseline, which sat in every bathroom cabinet and kitchen drawer, ready to be used at a moment's notice for every dry spot, ashy knee, scraped elbow, and chapped lip. Before you left the house, Mama would inspect you from head to toe, spotting any hint of ashy skin and addressing it with a generous application. Your lips got coated before school during winter months, and your elbows and knees received extra attention to prevent that dry, flaky skin. You knew better than to leave the house looking ashy because that reflected poorly on your mother's care and attention, and that was simply not acceptable. And then there was Dixie Peach hair grease with that distinctive scent that filled every bathroom. Dixie Peach came in a small orange tin with a red lid, and that thick, waxy grease moisturized scalps and added shine to hair with a smell so distinct, sweet, and slightly chemical that it lingered in bathrooms and on pillowcases long after it was applied. If you grew up in a Black household in the 70s, you know exactly what I am talking about. Let me tell you about sitting under that bonnet hair dryer at the beauty salon. It was an experience that made you feel like a real woman, even when you were only 10 years old. The beauty salon was a sacred space where Black women gathered to get their hair washed, set, and styled, and young girls were brought along to learn and participate in the ritual. After your hair was rolled onto those pink foam curlers, you were led to the dryer, where a large dome would lower over your head and blow hot air for what felt like forever. You could not hear much over the noise, so you sat there flipping through Ebony and Jet magazines, studying fashion spreads and imagining your future while the heat was intense and your scalp began to itch. You endured it because the result was worth it. Walking out of that salon with your hair freshly styled made you feel beautiful and polished, ready to face the world with confidence. Those moments under the dryer, Reading those magazines and dreaming about your future were part of growing up Black and female in the 70s. Fashion and self-expression. The 70s brought revolutionary changes in how Black women dressed and presented themselves. Wearing pantsuits with matching vests like the ones your mother made could make you feel sophisticated and grown, even when you were still just a girl. The 70s brought pantsuits into mainstream fashion, while Black women embraced this style with bold colors, wide legs, and coordinating vests that completed the look. Young Black girls would watch their mothers dress for work or special occasions in these sharp outfits. When you got your own smaller version, you felt like you were stepping into womanhood, since the pants were comfortable but polished and the vests added structure. Together, they made a statement that Black women could be both feminine and powerful. Wearing matching pantsuits meant you were taking yourself seriously, and that message was not lost on young girls who were learning what it meant to carry themselves with confidence. Platform shoes had thick soles that added several inches of height, and they came in every color and style you could imagine, from sandals to boots to sneakers. For young Black girls, getting a pair of platforms felt like stepping into womanhood, even if you were only 12 or 13. The shoes made you taller, your walk more confident, and your outfits instantly more stylish. Platforms were not always comfortable. Walking in them took practice, but the look was absolutely worth it. Those shoes represented the fun and fearless fashion of the decade, a time when bigger was better and standing out was celebrated. The natural hair movement. One of the most powerful cultural shifts of the 1970s was feeling the pride of seeing Black women wearing natural hairstyles, as the natural hair movement gained serious momentum throughout the decade, with more Black women choosing afros, braids, and twists instead of straightening their hair to conform to white beauty ideals. For young Black girls, seeing teachers, neighbors, and family members embrace their natural texture sent a strong message: your hair was beautiful just as it was. This movement was both political and personal, tied to Black pride and self-acceptance. Afro puffs held together with rubber bands and bobby pins were a hairstyle every Black girl with natural hair knew how to create. It was simple and cute. You would part your hair down the middle, then gather each side into a puff that sat high on your head. The challenge was getting the puffs to look even and stay in place all day without the rubber bands breaking or the bobby pins slipping out. For Black girls in the 1970s, Afro puffs were a way to embrace natural hair while still looking put together for school or play. The style was practical, keeping hair out of your face during active play, and it was also a statement of pride in natural texture. Household rules and discipline. Growing up in a Black household in the 70s meant understanding a very specific set of rules and expectations. Let me tell you about the look. It was an experience that required no words and left no room for misunderstanding. That single glance could freeze you in your tracks, silence a room full of misbehaving children, and communicate an entire lecture without a sound. You learned early to read your mother's face. The slight narrowing of her eyes or the tilt of her head meant trouble was coming if behavior did not change immediately. The look worked in church pews, grocery store aisles, and family gatherings, where acting up was simply not tolerated. Then there were the phrases that every child knew by heart. Hearing the words, "food at home" every time you drove past a restaurant defined childhood for those raised by Black women in the 70s. It did not matter how hungry you were, how good that restaurant smelled, or how much you begged for a hamburger or French fries. The answer was always the same, delivered with a finality that left no room for negotiation. Because I said so was the final word on any matter. Children who dared to ask why or tried to negotiate quickly learned that mothers did not owe them explanations. When a decision was made, it was final, and the only response expected was obedience without further questions. Saturday mornings meant one thing: cleaning the entire house. This was routine in households run by Black women in the 70s. Before cartoons could be watched or friends could be visited, every room had to be scrubbed, dusted, mopped, and organized to Mama's standards. Children were assigned tasks based on their age, from washing dishes to vacuuming carpets to cleaning bathrooms until they sparkled. The smell of pine sol and bleach filled the house, signaling that cleaning day was in full swing. Mothers inspected the work with sharp eyes. If something did not meet their expectations, you were sent back to redo it with no questions asked. These Saturday sessions taught responsibility, work ethic, and the importance of maintaining a clean and orderly home. For Black families in the 70s, a clean house reflected on the entire family, and mothers made sure their homes were spotless. Learning to press clothes with heavy irons heated on the stove was a skill passed down from mothers and grandmothers who believed in doing things right. Before electric irons became standard, many Black families still use cast iron flat irons heated directly on the stovetop. Young girls learned to test the temperature by sprinkling water on the surface and listening for that sizzle that meant it was ready. Pressing clothes was serious work that required focus and care, since one mistake could burn a hole right through your Sunday dress. Resourcefulness and conservation. Saving aluminum foil, butter tubs, and brown paper bags was a way of life in households run by Black women in the 70s, where nothing that could be reused was ever thrown away. Kitchens were filled with repurposed containers that served second and third lives. Butter and margarine tubs stored leftovers, held sugar and flour, and kept buttons and sewing supplies organized. Aluminum foil was washed, dried, and reused until it literally fell apart, because why buy new foil when the old stuff still worked? Brown paper bags from the grocery store became book covers, lunch bags, and material for crafts and school projects. Plastic bread bags were saved for freezing food, and glass jars held everything from bacon grease to spare change. This habit came from generations of making do with less and stretching every resource as far as it could go. For Black families in the 70s, wastefulness was unacceptable, and children learned that everything had value. This was not about being cheap, but about being smart and resourceful, and about being respectful of what you had. Watching Soul Train dancers and trying their moves in your living room was a weekly ritual for Black girls who wanted to learn the latest dances and styles. Soul Train premiered on October 2nd, 1971. It was so much more than a television show. It was a cultural event that showcased Black music, fashion, and dance every Saturday morning. The dancers on Soul Train were cool, confident, and incredibly talented. They moved down the Soul Train line with effortless style, while young Black girls watched closely, studying the steps and trying to replicate them after the show. Living rooms became dance floors. Girls practiced the robot, the bump, and the funky chicken, perfecting moves before showing them off to friends. For Black girls in the 70s, Soul Train taught us that our culture was vibrant and worthy of celebration. Dance was a powerful form of self-expression and joy. Double Dutch jump rope competitions in the neighborhood were where Black girls showed off their rhythm and style through games that were intense, with two long ropes turning in opposite directions, while girls jumped in the middle, performing tricks and chanting rhymes that everyone knew by heart. The competition was friendly but fierce, as girls tried to outdo each other with speed and creativity, while crowds gathered to watch, cheering and clapping as the ropes slapped the pavement in perfect rhythm. For Black girls in the 70s, Double Dutch was not just a game, but a way to bond with friends, stay active, and prove yourself in front of your peers. Sharing Ebony and Jet magazines with your mother was a bonding experience that taught Black girls about their community, their culture, and their possibilities. These magazines featured Black celebrities, politicians, entrepreneurs, and everyday heroes, and they showed the diversity and excellence of Black life in America. Young girls would flip through the pages, study those fashion spreads, read about civil rights leaders, and look at photos that documented important moments in Black history. Mothers would point out articles and explain their significance, using the magazines as teaching tools about pride and achievement. Jet Magazine was founded by John H. Johnson in 1951 with just a $500 loan secured against his mother's furniture. It was small enough to fit in a purse, but powerful enough to shape how Black America understood itself for over 60 years. It became a fixture in Black households, barbershops, beauty salons, and doctor's office waiting rooms across the country. When you saw Jet, you knew you were in a Black space. Watching Diana Ross transform from Supreme to solo superstar was an experience that showed Black girls they could reinvent themselves and chase their dreams. Diana Ross had been the lead singer of the Supremes, one of the most successful groups in Motown history, but by the 70s, she was stepping out on her own. Her solo career brought hits like Ain't No Mountain High Enough and Touch Me in the Morning. Her acting role in Lady Sings the Blues proved she was more than just a singer. For young Black girls watching her rise, Diana Ross represented glamour, ambition, and the courage to take risks. Powerful screen representations. Watching Pam Grier as Foxy Brown showed Black girls that women could be action heroes who were strong, smart, and unapologetically beautiful. Foxy Brown, released in 1974, featured a character who took control of her own story, fighting back against injustice with confidence and style. Pam Grier brought power and sensuality to the role, showing Black women as complex characters who could handle themselves in any situation. For young Black girls watching these films, often sneaking peeks when their parents were not looking, Foxy Brown represented a kind of female strength they had not seen on screen before. She was not waiting to be rescued, she was doing the rescuing. Watching Cicely Tyson in the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman was a moment that changed how Black girls saw their history and themselves. The television movie aired on January 31st, 1974, and told the story of a woman who lived from slavery through the civil rights movement, spanning over a century of Black American history. Cicely Tyson's performance was powerful and moving, showing the strength and resilience of Black women who survived unimaginable hardships. For young Black girls watching with their families, the film was emotional and educational, bringing history to life in a way textbooks never could. The 1975 film Mahogany starred Diana Ross as a secretary who becomes a high fashion model. It showed that Black women could succeed in industries that had traditionally excluded them, and its message that success meant nothing if you lost yourself along the way resonated deeply with Black audiences. Cultural connections and heritage. Hearing the Click song by Miriam Makeba playing at family gatherings introduced Black girls to the richness of African music and culture. Miriam Makeba, known as Mama Africa, brought the sounds of South Africa into Black American homes with her unique vocal style and powerful presence. The Click song featured traditional Xhosa clicking sounds that fascinated listeners and made the music feel exotic and deeply rooted in African heritage. For Black families in the 70s, playing Makeba's music was a way to honor their connection to the motherland and to teach their children about the diversity of Black culture beyond America. Young girls would try to imitate those clicking sounds, laughing when they could not get it quite right, but the music stayed with them. Makeba's artistry and activism showed Black girls that African women were strong, talented, and worthy of respect and admiration. Learning to cook greens and cornbread from your grandmother was an education in tradition, patience, and love. It went far beyond following a recipe. Grandmothers did not use measuring cups or written instructions. They cooked by feel, by taste, and by generations of knowledge passed down through the family. Young Black girls would stand beside them in the kitchen, watching as they cleaned collard greens, leaf by leaf. They seasoned them with ham hocks or fatback and let them simmer for hours until they were tender and flavorful. Making cornbread meant learning the right ratio of cornmeal to flour, when to add a little sugar, and how to know when the skillet was hot enough. These lessons were about more than food. They were about carrying on family traditions and understanding that cooking was an act of service that kept families together and connected to their roots. Hearing the words, "always have your own money," was advice that Black mothers in the 70s drilled into their children from an early age, and the lesson was especially aimed at daughters who were taught never to be completely financially dependent on anyone else. The message was crystal clear. Never put yourself in a position where you cannot leave or take care of yourself if necessary. And for Black families in the 70s, financial independence was about dignity and protection. Discovering that mama knew exactly what you did before you even got home was a mysterious phenomenon. Every child raised by a Black woman in the 70s experienced it. You could misbehave at school, get into trouble in the neighborhood, or do something you thought nobody saw, and somehow mama already knew when you walked through that door. The network of mothers, grandmothers, aunties, and neighbors who watched over all the children in the community was invisible but incredibly effective. Someone was always watching, and that someone would call your mama before you made it home. For Black families in the 70s, it truly did take a village to raise a child, and this invisible network kept kids safer and more accountable than they realized at the time. Attending Sunday church services was absolutely non-negotiable in homes run by Black women in the 70s. There was no such thing as sleeping in, feeling tired, or not being in the mood when Sunday morning came around. You were up early, bathed, dressed in your Sunday best, and sitting in those pews regardless of how you felt about it. Church was not just about religion, but about community and showing respect for traditions that had sustained Black families through generations. Mothers saw church attendance as essential to raising children with morals, values, and a foundation of faith that would guide them through life. Rites of passage and growing up. Getting your first pair of hoop earrings was a milestone. It marked a transition from little girl to young woman in the eyes of your family and community. Hoop earrings were more than just jewelry. They were a cultural symbol that Black women had worn for generations, representing confidence, style, and heritage. For young Black girls, the moment they were finally allowed to wear hoops, usually after their ears were pierced and fully healed, was deeply significant. Hoops came in all sizes, from small and subtle to large and dramatic, and choosing your first pair was an exciting decision. Wearing hoops made you feel more mature and connected to the older women in your life who wore them with pride. The earrings became part of your identity, a way to express yourself and to show the world that you were growing up on your own terms. Playing jacks and hand clap games during recess was how Black girls built friendships and passed the time before phones and video games existed. Jacks required skill and quick reflexes as you bounced a small rubber ball and scooped up metal pieces before the ball hit the ground again. Hand clap games like Miss Mary Mack had intricate patterns and rhymes you had to memorize, testing your coordination and rhythm. These games were passed down from older girls to younger ones, creating a tradition that connected generations. The foundation of love. Coming home to a hot meal waiting on the table was a daily expression of love from Black mothers in the 70s. No matter how tired Mama was from work, no matter what else was happening in life, Mama made sure her children ate a proper dinner every single night. The smell of food cooking greeted you as you walked through the door, signaling safety, stability, and care in a world that did not always provide those things. Dinner was not just about nutrition, it was about family gathering together, checking in on each other's days, and maintaining connections that held everything together. Saying nightly prayers together before being tucked into bed was a sacred ritual in homes run by Black women in the 70s, where every evening ended the same way, with children kneeling beside their beds or sitting with Mama as she led them through prayers. These moments taught faith and gratitude and the importance of pausing to acknowledge blessings even on difficult days. Children learned to pray for family members, give thanks for what they had, and ask for guidance and protection. Experiencing unconditional love wrapped in tough lessons was the ultimate gift from Black mothers in the 70s, since every rule, every correction, and every stern word came from a place of deep love and fierce protection, while these mothers were preparing their children for a world that would not always be kind, and they refused to send them out unprepared. The discipline was love, while the high expectations were love, and the sacrifice of personal comfort so children could have what they needed was love. Children did not always understand it then, but as adults, they recognized that every lesson their mothers taught them was an act of devotion. Black mothers in the 70s loved their children enough to be strict, to demand excellence, and to never let them settle for less than their best, and that love shaped who those children became, carrying them through challenges and reminding them of their worth. For anyone raised by a real Black woman in the 70s, that love remains the foundation of everything. Those 25 experiences were not just memories, they were the building blocks of character, resilience, and pride that continue to shape generations today. The 70s represented a unique moment when Black women honored tradition and broke new ground, creating a legacy of strength, style, and substance that daughters and granddaughters carry forward. These nostalgic reflections remind us that the lessons learned in kitchens, beauty salons, and living rooms were not just about growing up, they were about growing strong. If these memories resonated with you, share this video with someone who lived through these times, and let's keep these stories alive for the generations who come after us.